So now it's time to get into the meat of things. And what do I mean by that? One of the best ways to really start out with college access, I've always found, and I'm sure the rest of the instructors and members of the group can attest to this, is when we start talking about internally who we are, what we're interested in, what our goals are. Everybody is different. Whether you're 14 or 18, whether you're a freshman or a senior right now listening to this, everybody has different priorities, different thoughts, different feelings, different interests, different goals, maybe. We need to start thinking about them a little bit. We need to start exploring them a little bit because knowing who we are helps us in determining what is our best options for the future. And I want to start with this question. What does it mean to be smart? Think about it for a minute as we go over this. We hear the word smart a lot, oh, you're really smart, you're very smart. That was a smart comment, all that type of stuff. And smart always is used as in a very, excuse me, smart is always used in a very positive way. But what does it actually mean to be smart? What determines smarts or intelligence for us? Some people argue that, well, like being really book smart is the way to go. Being good with numbers is the way to go. Those are the common answers. But how do we really define smart? What types of smarts are there? And most importantly, how do we apply them? How do we apply our smarts to everything we do? Now, keep in mind, we may have an answer to this, and I encourage you to think about this on your own. Ask yourself these questions. There is technically no right or wrong answer to that, but what I can point out is that what we may think of when we think of smarts can be expanded. As I said, many people kind of just pigeonhole it to general intelligence, being a bookworm, for example, really book smart, or being really good at numbers, good at mathematics. But there's more types of smarts than that. In fact, one concept that I would love to talk about real quick here is from a psychologist by the name of Howard Gardner. Now, you may have heard of Howard Gardner before, but if not, the short version of everything is right what you see on the screen here. He created this theory in the 1980s called the theory of multiple intelligence, where he proposed that people are not born with all the intelligence they will ever have. It is a skill, if you will, that people can learn, and it allows us to learn in different ways. A lot of what Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence did was it challenged the traditional notion that there is more than one single type of intelligence. And as you can see in the giant wheel here, he actually created 8 different intelligence, or 8 different smarts, if you will, that people might be good at. And it's not just like I'm good at one and terrible at the others. No, you can be strong in multiple intelligences here, and they often overlap as well. So the official names for a lot of these would be visual spatial, musical, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic, logical and mathematical, and verbal and linguistic. Those are the official names. But as you can see, they also go by different types of smarts. Visual spatial, for example, is called picture smart. Verbal linguistic is word smart. Think about what I asked you before. What does it mean to be smart? Well, according to Gardner, it could mean that different things here. For example, if we look at word smart, the use of language, the ability to learn languages, understanding the use of words, whether they're written or spoken, that was the main focus that Gardner looked at. But it would also be the focus of others in how well we can comprehend and understand languages. How can we comprehend words that are being said to us, spoken to us, sung to us? And with these type of smarts, with word smart, we come into the forms of what we might be interested in, what we gravitate towards. Gardner argued that those that were really interested in linguistics, learning languages, really interested in the telling of stories or writing of poetry or just reading and writing in general tended to be pretty intelligent in word smarts. Then we have the other one that I mentioned before that everybody tends to think of as being smart, number smarts. That's more than just math. It's also scientific reasoning, problem solving, recognizing patterns, working with numbers and shapes, being very visual in what you see and how all these different pieces can be put together. Individuals, whether they're youth or whether they're older, who might be interested in puzzles, logic and reasoning, experimenting, or mathematics, they're the ones that are very likely to have a high intelligence in number smarts. Again, what does it mean to be smart? Well, this is one possible definition, and that's just for two of them. Does it really fit in these neatly? Not necessarily. And as you're about to see, there's also overlap with the other smarts as well. For example, logic and experimentation can fit in other smarts quite easily, especially when we're dealing with pattern recognition. Picture smart in particular is a good choice for that. We're a visual learner. We love art. We love drawing things. We can look at patterns much more clearly than other people can. We can appreciate the aesthetic beauty of things. Maybe we do our own forms of art as well. Maybe we like drawing or painting or making sculptures or collages, whatever it may be. Again, notice how there's some overlap between that and number smarts. That's fine and normal. Some people can be both or multiple smarts at once. Then we also have action smarts, physical activity, body rhythm, how we are with our bodies, how graceful we can be on a balance beam when doing gymnastics, how good we are at dancing, how good we are with our hands physically. Action smarts is probably the most physical of all the smarts. We also have music smarts, one of the more unusual ones. Also deals with rhythm, but it's dealing with the rhythm of music, the musical patterns that we notice, the performances that we can maybe participate in, or recognizing a good performance. When we hear somebody sing really well on shows like American Idol or The Masked Singer, we can recognize the skills they have with their voice. When we compose our own music or write songs, the skill that gets involved in that is based upon how we keep rhythm, tempo, and rhyming together. That is music smarts. That also ties in with word smarts and action smarts a little bit too. Performing can be a physical task as well. And musical composing takes a lot of reading and writing to get down the rhythm too. Then there is nature smart. You could be more scientifically minded. You can look to understand the natural surroundings of what's around you. Really focus heavily on biology and environmentalism. Kind of being in touch with what nature provides us. People smarts, a very important one. Empathy and social skills, how we talk to people, how we interact with everyone. Sometimes it's also including reading them. So like catching different body language or tics that people have when they're speaking. Understanding the cadence in their voice, whether or not they may be lying to you or upset about something or withdrawn or very joyful or any other emotion we can put into that. How we interact with people is very important, and that is often overlooked as being a type of intelligence. And with that is also the opposite, which is self-smart. Understanding yourself as an individual, being in touch with what your feelings and emotions are, actually providing self-care for yourself when needed. Self-smart is the most intrinsic, which is a fancy way of saying the one that is most locked inside of you, the most personal, and really being in touch with who you are and and your feelings on things is a key component of being rich in self-intelligence. All of these smarts, along with what we talked about with that question before, at the very least, I'm hoping it's making you question it now. What does it mean to be smart? It can mean a lot of different things. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, some of these I'm really good at. I'm really good at like basketball. Maybe I'm really good at action smarts because I really love physical activity. Others might be I'm really good at, solving puzzles or playing video games and using hand-eye coordination. That could be a mix of picture smart and number smart. Maybe I'm good at like talking with my friends and giving them advice. People smart. Good at singing songs. Music smart. Many of us gravitate towards certain types of smarts, whether we are aware of it or not. And how do we know this? Well, it's tied basically into things like our interests. How do smarts lead into interests? Well, the first question you got to ask is, what are you interested in? Think about it for a second. And when I say interests, it could be practically anything. I'm interested in playing Fortnite a lot. I'm interested in playing football or doing gymnastics. I'm interested in getting like great grades and reading books. I'm interested in learning how to build a bicycle or doing wood shop or something like that. I'm interested in dancing, being part of a sports team, skateboarding, interested in social media like TikTok or Facebook, interested in hanging out with my friends, helping out my community. Our interests can come into a lot of different ways, a lot of different forms. And we naturally have things we're interested in doing. Not everybody's interested in sports or video games or dancing, but that shouldn't stop you from being interested in it if you are. The point being is that what we're interested in is something we need to think about too. And then the question is really simple. When we know what we're interested in, how can we match it with our smarts? For example, I mentioned before, really into sports like playing football, basketball, maybe I do running, cross country, stuff like that. I can be very action smarts. I'm really good at the physical activity. I can really control my body really well. Same thing can go with something like skateboarding. Or if you're more into the video game side of things, that's hand-eye coordination, pattern recognition, solving puzzles, interactive and playing with items. That could be number smarts, or it could be picture smarts. Hanging out with friends or family, very outgoing, very social. That's people smarts. Caring about your community, caring about, for example, maybe there's too much trash on the grounds that need to be cleaned up, or making sure that people are safe in your community. That could be a mix of nature smarts and people smarts right there. What we are interested in a lot of ways is tied to those previous smarts I talked about. What does it mean to be smart again? Well, it means that we have interests, and what are we interested in can determine a lot of different factors for us, especially for life after high school. Remember that other question there. How are your interests related to your smarts? I gave you a bunch of examples just now, but keep thinking about that for a second. Because interests can lead us into different futures, post secondary pathways, our careers, if you will. On the screen, you see right now something called a career cluster. So, what is a career cluster? It is series of words of multiple careers that could fit a specific category. In this case, it's an example of public and social services, educators, teachers, lawyers, officers, counselors, nuns, substance therapists, monks, specialists. Those are just some of the words you see in there. You might see a few others that you might be thinking, how does that really fit? Addiction, mental services, protection, museums, rehabilitation, medical, health, community, government. Well, this is where the question comes in. What interests fit this category? If I was to ask you to think about it and write down at least 3 interests that would fit this category for public and social services, what would you write? All of what you see there is an example of several different types of careers and several different words associated with those careers. We will all eventually find our place with a career. Uh, and the hope is that it'll be a career that we like, a career that we enjoy. Our desired career may be tied to our interests, which is tied to our smarts. And remember, they are often closely connected. So, what interests can fit this category? Well, considering some of the jobs, counselors, educators, teachers, health workers, detectives, officers, you can see a couple of things. Perhaps talking with people, empathizing with people, attempting to help people. Those are interests that we may have. And those interests are tied directly to things like people smarts. Knowing what to say in the right situation, reading a situation as well is tied with that. It's also scientific knowledge or just general knowledge on how to talk to people and what to say. General knowledge of what we need to know for our fields, what different techniques teachers learn to teach students, different programs that healthcare providers need to learn to care for those that need it the most. That could be a number of smarts. Obvious people smarts is the biggest one, but it could also be interests in things like book smarts or action smarts or even self smarts. These are just some examples. Again, life after high school, we'll be thinking about what we want to do next. Everybody in their own way wants to be stable, wants to learn a trade, wants to go to school, and wants to eventually go into a career that they will hopefully enjoy. Our interests right now can help us figure out what that career may be. If we're really into helping other people, if we're really into talking with people, then maybe we would be interested in becoming a counselor or a social worker or a lawyer or a doctor. Each of them follows different skill sets that could be based off our other interests. Book learning for lawyers and doctors, maybe, or being empathetic and learning from body language for social workers and educators. There's options for multiple pathways that can lead us to the same place. And that's the key part here. But let's actually talk about that and let's think about it with some examples. So for those that are listening right now, or those that are in the chat, what interests work with what careers? One of the images came up already, but that's okay. So what interests would a computer programmer have if we had to think about it? What about a psychologist? What about a carpenter? They are three unrelated jobs, but they may have overlapping interests, overlapping smarts. But they're three unrelated jobs and careers that many people might be striving to be when they grow up or when they leave high school. A computer programmer might be interested in making code, might be interested in how computers work, might be interested in the science behind it all. A psychologist might be interested in helping people and how the brain functions and how people think and feel and act. A carpenter might be interested in working with their hands, or they might be interested in creating something physically by using the materials around them. Each of those uses different smarts. Each of those come from different interests we may already have now. Each of them are viable careers for life after high school. All of this is just some examples of how everything interlocks together. Our careers, what our potential careers could be, can be tied directly to our interests, which are tied directly to our smarts.